YouTube, Kennard, Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. All my Auburn fans out there want to give a big war eagle especially during this pandemic time. COVID-19 has kind of shaken the nation at its core, especially when it comes to the economy and loss of life and just the overall mental stratosphere of the nation at this time. So I want to give a real big shout out to all the people out there keeping things safe, keeping things in line household wise. I know the mental sanity part kind of gets a little crazy sometimes. Being hemmed up in the house all day, only being able to go to the grocery store, the gas station, blah, blah, blah. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger War Eagle. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell twice so that you will be notified every time we come on talking about these Auburn Tigers. So I was just kind of thinking a little bit, been rewatching some video footage of Auburn from last year, especially with all the downtime. And thankfully, YouTube has content creators that actually take the time to revisit these ball games for us. I think you could probably have access to pretty much every game that you can actually stand to watch from Auburn from last year. One thing I don't want to see ever again, as long as I'm an Auburn fan, an Auburn alumnus, whatever you want to call it, as long as I have any level of affiliation with the Auburn Tigers, the frustration of watching this offensive line is incredible. Okay? I'm looking at an offense that at least has a decent amount of skilled players to be able to consistently move the football. Okay, but when I'm looking at an offensive line against Kent State, against Tulane, now I'm not saying they were bad all the time, but the levels of inconsistency is what probably drove the typical fan just bananas. You're thinking, okay, let's say Auburn gets the big win over Oregon. Now, don't get me wrong. In a first game, you have two teams, both of whom have aspirations to make some noise in their conference. We're talking about Oregon and Auburn. Auburn is a team that expects to compete for division championships, get into the SEC championship. Got there in 2017, got there in 2013. So it's not far-fetched. Made some runs in 2016. 2018 was pretty much a wash mid-season, had already lost 2 conference games. But you got 2 teams, Oregon on the rebound, wanting to make some noise in the Pac-12, the eventual Pac-12 champions, by the way. Both teams played, I would say, pretty sloppy. I actually enjoy watching that game because in ways you could see the comedy of errors, but the 2 teams wound up having, relatively successful seasons. But the offensive line play of Auburn was very questionable in this particular football game. One, you got a freshman quarterback at times running for his life as soon as the ball is snapped. I remember one particular play where Troy Dye, the versatile linebacker for Oregon, lined up in the jack linebacker position. I think that's what Oregon calls their version of the buck linebacker. They call him a jack. And matter of fact, Tulane calls him the Joker. Each team has their different names for that particular position. But either way, Troy Dye lines up in this position. It's a very crucial third down for the Auburn Tigers. Untouched. The offensive tackle takes a bad blocking angle, a bad blocking step in pass protection, didn't even touch him. And by the time, I think it was Sean Shivers in the backfield, by the time Sean Shivers could recover, Bo Nix is already pressured. And of course, Bo Nix is going to scramble to the right, which was his wont to do. Want meaning his accustomation. That's what he was accustomed to doing. Scrambles to the right, nowhere to throw the football. Lo and behold, it's another 4th down. Surprisingly, Auburn won that particular football game. Boobie Whitlow throughout that game having to literally create yards out of virtually nothing. As you see during certain points of the game in blocking, you're expecting to see forceful movement down the field. But if the running back is running the football and not only has he passed the offensive lineman, but he passes the offensive lineman standing up, there's no push, there's no movement, there's no, I think about Oregon's offensive line, for example, and I know I'm kind of on a tangent here, but it just was really irritating to watch the unnecessary struggles, in my opinion, at points for the Auburn offensive line. And I'm looking at this, okay, is it a coaching issue? Is it these guys sometimes guys just don't match. Sometimes they just don't gel together. And if you look at the size differential, the skill set differential, you can kind of see some things there. I look at offensive lines like the Oregon's offensive line. You could tell they were a unit. They took pride in actually being a unit. They had a level of identity. But when you look at Auburn's offensive line, for example, individually, some of these guys are actually pretty good, because you got Prince Tegawanagu, who is actually probably will be playing in the NFL. It was just really, really irritating at times to watch. But either way, like I said before, one of the issues I think the offensive line had last year was just no true identity. And that was really the story of Auburn's offense in general. You just couldn't really decipher what you were watching. In addition to, the scripted plays by Gus Malzahn that, were predictable, to say the least, at times. And then I just don't think, with the offensive line that kind of struggles with consistency, I think you need to do things quick. You don't need to have slow developing plays, or plays where you have to be too creative with too many pulling guards. They weren't athletic enough as a whole to do that. And then when you have the liability of Caleb Kim at center, it doesn't make things any better. So quick strikes, kind of like if you go back and watch the Auburn versus Washington game, I think that's the best example of the type of offense that Auburn needed to run at times last year, especially hurry up, no huddle. Auburn versus Minnesota. Auburn really couldn't get too much going offensively. Good thing for the Noah Igbenogany kickoff return for a touchdown. But early in the third quarter, Auburn goes hurry up, no huddle. Hurry up, no huddle. Easy touchdown. But then the next time they get the football, away from the hurry up, no huddle. Got to do things quick. When your offensive line is struggling, when you have a quarterback that's inexperienced, that's struggling, give him some quick stuff, some high percentage plays to actually gain some confidence. Same thing with the offensive line. A little bit of success, gain some confidence. Not all this slow developing stuff. These end arounds that you have to block very well. You have to already have the offense is off balance. The defense is off balance. That's one thing that Gus Malzahn was good at, say, in 2013, 2014. A lot of his stuff worked because he called plays that set up more plays. But this error in play calling, first of all, he has to understand this. Gus Malzahn's got to understand this. Number one, the players are just much faster. The players have been trained they've been doing this all through high school now. There's nothing taboo about Gus Malzahn's offense anymore. It's a situation where at this point, it's man versus man. It's talent versus talent. Yeah, back then you could out-talent a guy or out-scheme a guy, but now these guys are fast. You have linebackers now who are just as fast as some cornerbacks were back when Gus Malzahn started this stuff. So that those types of plays are not going to work anymore. These guys are much more athletic. So although you can run these certain schemes, but you have to adapt to the fact that there's a lot more speed at the linebacker position, at the defensive end position, as it was, say, 7-8 years ago. It was more so about size at that time. And, of course, you got a guy like Nick Marshall. He's going to outrun everybody. But who's to say with the skill sets that are prevalent now, if that would have worked now? He has to upgrade based on what his opponents are doing now. But anyway, that's my tangent about the offensive line. I'm not going to talk bad about them, but it was really interesting how that group really put this offense in a huge bind, especially in big games with the penalties, especially that Caleb Kim fumble. Auburn got some good momentum going against the LSU defense. Caleb Kim fumble, errant snap. Those types of things from a senior offensive line, just inexcusable. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast Talking Auburn Football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.